Code Geass R2 is a great study in how to catch lightning in a bottle for the second time. Code Geass has an impeccable cast, and in this video I want to focus on the parallels in the arcs of Anya and Villetta. Two characters who dare to ask the question, who is Lelouch Lamperouge? And what I find fascinating is what their discoveries tell us about that man's identity. I am Zero, this is Kato, and today let's talk about Code Geass. Let's start with Anya, just because she's an interesting character that really hasn't gotten any of the attention she's due on this channel. Anya Allstream is the Knight of Six, and the youngest member of the Knights of the Round. She's recognizable by her 1,000-yard stare. When we first meet her, some viewers might assume that her lifeless personality is the result of such a young child soldier being shell-shocked from exposure to Britannia's traumatic battlefields. This could even be supported by her apparent memory loss. Anya would always go around recording events on her phone, and even explains that this is her way of making memories stick. But like C2 and R1, Anya says that she doesn't remember any of it. The strangest part is that the memories she does possess don't match the records in her diary. They haven't quite given the game away yet, but as viewers we know that memory issues are a very common side effect of Geass. We also know that Geass is a power that has been recognized by Britannia, since the Emperor used his Geass on Lelouch. So this girl in the Knights of the Round, is she a Geass victim, or a Geass user, or just a girl with PTSD? We're free to speculate until eventually we find out the answer is all of the above, but mostly the first thing. We'll get to the unexpected cause of her memory loss, with which all of you are already familiar, but first let's talk about what I consider to be the most interesting element of this character, her motivations. In turn 8, the screen fades to Japan as Schneisel says, everyone has something they yearn for. And there we see Arthur introducing himself to Anya while she's at her diary. The cat from Japan, named for a character from Britannian myth. Maybe something about her reminds him of Nunnally. She asks Suzaku if he misses Japanese things, but he doesn't have an answer. Then when Suzaku hesitates to sign an execution order, Anya does it in his stead, signifying that despite her age, she does not have an ounce of his reluctance to kill. She asks Suzaku why he even serves in Japan at this point. He could choose to fight any of Britannia's battles. If he isn't nostalgic for Japan and they hate him so much, why stay here? Suzaku is nostalgic for some of his memories here, and that's the time he spent with Euphemia, the best time of his life before Zero cut it short. And whether or not he's a masochist, he does think he deserves punishment. One fun thing that R2 does is it puts characters into situations and dynamics we've seen before, such as the amnesiac Anya having a similar detached vibe to C2 and R1. It's an excellent way of reusing elements that worked while not undoing the progress that the characters have made. For another example, Suzaku punched Lloyd in the face last season, so now Anya has to be the one to make him have an existential crisis. The "are you a masochist" joke is very Lloyd Asplund energy. But through this conversation, Anya discovered the answers she sought. Suzaku has a stake, a motivation, even a goal. More than that, he has a past. Things she doesn't have. This inquisitiveness is inspired by her wish to understand herself. Although she hasn't expressed it yet, this is the first hint of her wish given to us. Anya was sent to Area 11 along with Gino to assist Suzaku in suppressing Zero. For Suzaku, that largely involves investigating Lelouch Lamperouge. But despite what brought her here, this archipelago will be the site of her journey of self-discovery. In turn 12, she comes out and asks Lelouch if he's the same person as Lelouch v Britannia.
I am vengeance. I am the Knight. I am Batman!
Honestly, one of the most direct and spot-on accusations that Lelouch has gotten in the show, and it's followed up by Gino asking about his illegal gambling. In R1, when the question of Lelouch Lamperouge's connection to the Black Knights gets raised, it's so incredibly dramatic because we know they're on the right path. But since we've been down that path, they're able to use the same idea for comedy in R2. This moment never fails to get a laugh from me, and Anya and Gino are just so entertaining in Ashford Academy. I love that an episode all about justifying the inclusion of Ashford Academy in the series begins with one of Anya's most memorable moments, and just such a great joke. And then they show Anya when Millie is saying everyone is allowed to use any tools or weapons. Epic foreshadowing for when Anya pulls up in the Mordred, right as Shirley is wondering how Lelouch pulls off such miraculous evasive maneuvers. I find it especially fitting that Anya gives Lelouch the most heart attacks this episode next to Shirley, and I would be remiss not to mention that Jeremiah is another major player in Turn 12. The B-plot is mainly about the Geass Order in Code R. Cornelia discovers what they've been up to when she runs into General Bartley. They bring back a lot of cool stuff from R1 that was mostly hinted at in the background until the finale, but now we know a lot more about what's going on, so it gets to take up a lot more of the runtime of the episode than it would have in the first season. Meanwhile, between Anya standing next to Villetta, Anya remarking that there's two Lelouches, and Shirley remarking that Lelouch hasn't been himself lately, this episode calls to attention the fact that Zero's secret identity is twofold. It reminds us that Lelouch has to worry about people finding out that Zero is Lelouch Lamperouge, or that Zero is Lelouch v Britannia. Anya is a big part of how the narrative brings the viewer's attention to that dynamic in the rising action. This tension she provides is where the fun is born, and it all culminates in the end of the episode when Jeremiah cancels the Geass on Shirley. It's a really compelling conclusion to what was such a fun and light episode. Shirley cements herself as the future Mrs. Lamperouge and gets to bust Lelouch for having a harem. But then it all comes crashing down when the flood of memories forces her to see as the masks, the false identities of all those around her drop, restoring the memories of Lelouch's alter ego in the process. She got too close to Lelouch and was forced to confront Zero. All because of Geass, the cursed wish that twists one's fate. But enough about Shirley. Similarly, Anya's investigation into Zero forces her into direct confrontations with strange phenomena related to Geass. This is actually the cause which affected her to ask Lelouch about Lelouch v Britannia in Turn 12. Just one episode prior, in Turn 11, Anya clashes with the Black Knights in battle, and as she comes into indirect contact with C2, she inexplicably loses control of herself, as memories of Lelouch's childhood flash to the forefront of her mind. Are these her memories? Then there's Turn 16. I find it funny that while Suzaku is grappling with the decision to accept the Flea, he's standing between Lloyd and Anya. You can hear his blood pressure. As I discussed in the sequel to my Nina video, this is the hardest decision of his life, which is saying a lot. In this episode, we also get the conversation from earlier where Nina confides in Suzaku about her memory problems. She was recording him and Arthur on her phone, like the image was something she wanted to cherish. Anya says that people shouldn't believe in their former selves because memories are so uncertain. To explain how a person could have that perspective, she lets out that her own memories conflict with her diary. This leads Suzaku to suspect that she might be a victim of the Emperor's Geass. Maybe she saw something she shouldn't. Well, he's on the right track. During the Second Battle of Tokyo in Turn 18, Anya has another moment like the clash with C2 when she nearly kills Zero on the battlefield. I've gotten a lot of the information for this video from rewatching the show obviously, and also from the fan wiki codegeass.fandom.com. The detailed episode synopses and the list of characters under each episode in order of appearance are really useful resources to pinpoint when characters appear, which has helped speed along my research when combing through the show for Anya scenes. We all know why the fact that I've never credited these fan wiki sites is suddenly on my mind, but I also wanted to point out that they have a term for these moments with Anya in turns 11 and 18. They call them Geass spasms. Not sure where they got that term, but I thought it was neat. The Code Geass fandom is full of devoted and passionate people who want to deepen the understanding of this deep series. Let's do that by looking at more of what I termed the strange phenomena. That term isn't as neat. After the Geass spasm in Turn 18, Anya is implied to regain control of the Mordred in time to get away from the Flea. In the next episode, she pilots the Mordred to intercept the Shinkiro as Zero makes a daring escape. Now that she and everyone knows that Zero is Lelouch, capturing him should have been simple. Although she has the nightmare dead to rights, somehow it teleports out of danger in the nick of time. She asks herself, how could it move like that? Anya has gone up against this machine before, and nothing in its specs justifies the impossible maneuvers she witnessed. Just another inexplicable event that unfolds as she gets closer to Lelouch. With Britannian forces granted access to the Ikaruga, Anya is close enough to C2 for the secret of her relationship with Geass to finally be unveiled. The person controlling Anya enters C's world and takes on her true form, that of Marion v Britannia. Anya's identity crisis, every aspect of herself that comprised her internal conflict, was all the result of the Geass power of Lelouch's mother. This revelation caused such confusion, such shock and awe in not only the show's cast, but its viewers, and Anya is only a small piece of what Code Geass has in store for us. It's such a mind boggle. If she didn't come to Japan, she might have gone through many more years of her life in the same way she was at the start of R2, wondering who she is and why her memories are so insecure. But also that couldn't happen because these events were inevitable. It was Marianne, it was Charles's wish, it was fate. But we get ahead of ourselves. Everything will be revealed on Kamine Island. When the world-shaking Ragnarok connection wakes her up, Anya has a chance to ask herself some clarifying questions. She chooses not to return directly to Britannia and only chooses to fight Lelouch after he starts abusing his powers as a Geass-wielding emperor. Now he's in the position Charles was in, and as I'm sure you're aware, he uses that position to make the Emperor of Britannia the enemy of the world. Everyone has a good cause to be against Geass, especially those who have been victimized by it. Anya actually says she'll turn Lelouch and Suzaku into recordings. That's a bar. Schneizel apparently promised to restore her memories, which is probably a bold-faced lie. Schneizel's really buying into his becoming god plan, promising to perform miracles. He should have known better than to challenge Zero to a miracle contest, I'll say that much. We don't get to see all of the answers Anya discovers to those questions about who she is, and what she wants to do with her life. But what I want to highlight in this video is just how intertwined her fate is with that of Lelouch and Geass. Anya and Lelouch were two high-born Britannian children who were thrust into war and cursed to have their fates twisted by Geass, all because they witnessed the assassination of Marianne v Britannia. And they introduce her as just another Knight of the Rounds going to Japan to investigate Zero and fight the Black Knights. I can't help but be impressed by how consistently Code Geass pulls off these strokes of genius, even knowing that a lot of elements of what makes Anya work already worked in R1. One such entertaining element of R1 that's ripe for a comeback is none other than our orange boy Jeremiah. Shout out to Tropical Robot. Based on Anya's dialogue with Jeremiah during their battle, she seems to reveal that she isn't satisfied by the idea of being someone's subordinate. It's a fitting next step that she seemingly resigns from the military entirely in the epilogue along with Jeremiah. Jeremiah was once threatened that he'd be forced to retire and work on an orange farm, so seeing them work on an orange farm drives home the idea that they're out of the military for us. I'm happy for Anya. She's finally getting to make her own choices about her life without Marianne's manipulation. It also makes sense that Jeremiah would accept a role mentoring the girl who was so close to Marianne before and after her death. While Anya seems to be the character closest to Jeremiah at the end of the series, at the beginning of the series that honor belonged to Villetta Nu. She was only interested in climbing up the social ladder, and Jeremiah was leading the Pureblood faction to great success in Area 11. That is, until he had the bright idea to frame the son of the late Genbu Kudorugi. His plan was to strengthen the standing of the Pureblood faction even further by bringing the killer of a member of the royal family to justice. We know why that chance captivated him so much. But his mistake was in underestimating the dangers of terrorism and the value of an innocent Japanese man. A mistake Villetta would not make. So then, just as Villetta had warned, every resistance group in Japan was thinking of ways to try to free Suzaku. Jeremiah is lucky Lelouch was the only one who showed up. He acted like an innocent foreigner was as good as a guilty one, and he would pay the price. Here, Villetta will witness some more of those inexplicable phenomena that we were talking about earlier, as Zero works his first public miracle. For some reason, Jeremiah suddenly starts insisting on letting their prisoner escape with the confessed killer of Prince Clovis. Later, Kuehl is furious with Jeremiah for his actions to the point of recalcitrance and accuses him of faking amnesia, which of course only enrages the Purebloods further. They want to get rid of him before Cornelia shows up and sees his presence as a sign of corruption in the faction. But considering this moment and the moment in Stage 2, Villetta alone begins to see a pattern of highly loyal Britannian officers inexplicably abandoning their posts after coming into contact with a mysterious figure. General Bartley abandoned the prince, several soldiers abandoned their nightmares including her, and a man she knew well acted out of character. Each person had memory issues following those strange events. So Villetta continues to stand by Jeremiah even during the Emperor's speech, but she doesn't place her faith in following him anymore. Her new plan to climb the ranks in Britannian society is to make Jeremiah's old plan a success by turning in Clovis's real murderer, whom everyone now knows to be Zero. To do that, she has to uncover everything she can about the identity of Zero, and the mysterious student in her hazy memory. In order to achieve her wish to climb the rungs of Britannian society, Villetta must ask the dangerous question that later gets Anya into so much trouble. Who is Lelouch Lamperouge? She asks for Jeremiah's help in tracking down the uniform that she saw, and eventually they get Detard involved, even telling him about Ashford Academy. His investigative skills are good enough for the task, but unfortunately for them, he's more interested in seeing where this whole Zero idea goes. Detard figures out that Britannia is going to attack the JLF at Narita and tips off Zero. Although after Jeremiah is defeated and presumed dead in the Battle of Narita, Villetta discovers a new lead. One of the next of kin called in to identify one of the many corpses just so happens to be a student at Ashford Academy who knows a boy that looks very reminiscent of the mysterious student. Another thread of fate thus plucked. By convincing this girl that this Lelouch Lamperouge was involved in her father's death and following her trail, Villetta ultimately discovers that he is none other than Zero himself, but at a great cost. Shirley does want justice for her father's unjust death, but before that she had placed all of her hopes on a future with the man who turned out to be her father's killer. What cruel fate, what artful friction of two passionate wills! To protect her own dream for future happiness, Shirley shot Villetta in a moment of panic, saving Lelouch from his would-be captor. Villetta tried to uncover Zero's secret identity and raise her status in Britannia, but she ended up losing her memories and her identity, then fell in love with a Japanese rebel. This plot is so riveting, it feels real. It's such tremendous dramatic irony, it's stranger than fiction. Oh wait, one complaint people have about Code Geass is that it's allegedly an extremely contrived narrative. And here's where I really have to insert my own opinion. This negative framing is meant to diminish what is actually a positive thing. Coincidences and consequences are part of the power of Code Geass. That's how they convey themes related to fate. For instance, Zero reveals his identity as Lelouch to Sayako in Turn 8, at the same moment that Villetta embraces her desire to see Ogi again. I'll give you a more significant coincidence. Lelouch Lamperouge only survives stage 13 because Shirley just so happens to be in love with him. Most other Ashford students in her position would have just gone along with Villetta's plan. Then again, most wouldn't be carrying Lelouch's picture in the first place. The inspiration of a sudden idea in her mind to achieve her dream prevented her from considering Shirley's feelings. Who placed that idea there? Coincidence strikes again when out of all of the members of the Black Knights, Ogi is the first person to get to the amnesiac Villetta. This is just when he's beginning to get suspicious of Zero's identity, because Detard reacted very strangely when General Katase's escape vessel was destroyed. Detard most likely knows Zero's true identity, but he does know Zero's reasons, which made Ogi suspicious of both of those things. All of this because Detard wished to see Zero's fate unfold. Then Villetta, the one woman who could give Ogi some of those answers, practically fell into his lap. The ultimate consequence of this chance meeting is that Ogi and Villetta fall in love and expose all of Lelouch's built-up lies to the Black Knights. Code Geass is not the first narrative to use coincidences to achieve the sense that events are fated to play out a certain way, but it is a great example of how it's done. This is why we as Code Geass fans are so forgiving of these coincidences. The threads of fate are naturally imbued with the beauty of logic. The pieces of the puzzle fit together so perfectly and in such a satisfying way, because everyone is striving for their own wish. This is an important part of how they struck gold with Code Geass R1, and they managed to pull it off again with Anya in R2. And that's why even when people say that the soft reset for R2 was lame and contrived, my instinct is to say, well, it wasn't lame, we got some amazing Anya scenes because we went back to Ashford. And by deciding to make Anya a mix of C2, Lloyd, and Villetta, they set the stage perfectly to make her Marianne. Code Geass R2 deliberately repeats many moments and threads from R1 to suggest that even with a second chance, our protagonist Lelouch was always fated for tragedy, and it couldn't go any other way. That's ultimately who he is, a wielder of the cursed power of kings. This is a series that utilizes concepts like contrivance and repetition as a strength, and even seemingly inconsequential characters like Villetta and Anya. Even the connection between these seemingly unrelated characters can shed light on how they managed to capture that lightning in a bottle. Each character in isolation tells us that Geass is a part of Lelouch's identity, but it's the connection between them that tells us the extent of the vulnerability. Two Britannians in Japan seeking their place in the world, only to have their fate subjected to the curse of Geass. As a result, their very identities were taken from each of them, but both of them found clarity they never expected when they took a closer look at a small piece of their world that goes by the name of Lelouch Lamperouge. I was tempted to just drop the mic after that and post the video presented without outroduction, but I decided against it. Welcome to the end of the video. If you want more, check out my playlist of Code Geass videos. There should be a link on screen. I told you guys I had some good Code Geass content coming for you, sorry to keep you waiting. This year I plan to talk about some characters that the fandom has never thought about or considered. It's gonna be exciting. I'm also gonna start using the community tab a lot more. I'm gonna be asking for you guys to give some input on the direction of the channel. I don't know how many more of these long outros I'll be doing if I get into the habit of posting on the community tab. Either way, thank you all for listening to my dumb rants. Subscribe for more. Be sure to hit the bell, like, comment, all that jazz. Consider supporting us on Patreon to get access to our patron-exclusive Discord server where you can chat with me and Hoodie whenever. You could even join us for our Bleach watch parties. We did Naruto, now we're doing Bleach. Hop on the train before we start Dragon Ball. That's enough of my gum flapping. I have some videos to make. 2024 is our year! Also, sorry about how my voice sounds in this video/outro. It's because I got COVID.